Good morning, everyone. We've got Austin live in person.
In the flesh.
In the flesh, right beside me today. It's real. It's not a hologram. We're almost there, innovative.
Oh, that'd be great. I can't wait until we can actually just do this whole thing virtually from the Bahamas or wherever we end up.
Perfect. Yeah.
Great.
So, everyone, welcome. Good and interesting long weekend. We had, we'll leave the political stuff out with Afghanistan and whatnot. I know there's a lot of people trying to tie that into the markets as much as they can. But to me, a little bit more interestingly, is 50 years after Nixon ended the gold standard. That's a bit more interesting.
That's a bit more of a fun story. You know, there's a nice example in there that even whenever the government says that they're just taking temporary action, temporary may mean 50 years. Who knows?
Yes.
But it certainly changed the course of financial history as we know it from that time going forward. It's really, important event to kind of highlight that and say, look, this is a shift in the way that economies functioned and particularly how the Federal Reserve functioned.
It just shows, too, that just because something that may have been a good idea at the time and had served its purpose runs its course. And we can see throughout periods of time, and especially when you look at financial history and you look at even like in the Madness of Crowds, that book we talked about.
Yes, yeah.
We've gone through these periods of times where we've had a currency based on something of value, and then where it isn't, and it gets debased and whatnot. And we're at a stage now where you really have a hard time pushing a narrative to not see the massive money printing and the complete debasement. We're seeing inflation now, but most people I know that have looked at data would have said there's been massive inflation for the last decade or more. Yeah. Not only because you were able to, big corporations, massive corporations were able to borrow it essentially nothing. No. And then just buy their own stock back and inflate some of these giant tech companies. And of course, real estate through the roof. Yeah. And it's an interesting because it's now more of a mindset before I jump into talking about Nixon, the gold standard, where people don't look at where they live as their home anymore. There's no such thing as a home. Yeah. People don't have homes. They just have an investment place that they sleep in.
Yeah, their property, their asset that they also sleep in. Yeah, exactly.
Which is terrible. It's a terrible way to live. It's a terrible move for society to go in that direction because once again, if you monetize everything, which is what they're trying to do, literally monetize every single thing, including your own personal health, you're going to have a very dystopic society. And you shouldn't have that. There should be a break away from this big push. But in any event, it's interesting to see where you could see it, especially for the U.S. to enforce dominance. You'd want to have this money printing press go, and not to be pegged to anything. And also, I like to remind people the Federal Reserve is neither federal nor is it a reserve. It's a private banking institution, usually coming from Goldman Sachs and your usual names go in there and they flip back and forth to being a chairman of one investment bank to then leading the Fed or being the
pop
treasurer,
over to the other one for a little bit
back and forth. So there isn't
pension here.
There is no incestuous relationship or nepotism going on there at all.
No, totally.
And it's interesting because people have been talking about fiat currency and the debasement of dollars. That's gone on forever. Like in ancient Rome, they used to do that. They literally shave off parts of the coin.
Did they really?
They did, yeah. So you could do that, or they would include lead, or they'd include something else to try to mix it in there just to save a little bit on a big amount. Now that happens at such a massive level, it's incredible. And that's part of the Bitcoin and crypto kind of push is a younger crowd looking and seeing, they want something different. They want something new.
Yeah.
My argument is it never will be. They'll never allow it.
Well, yeah, we're just trying it out. We're getting everyone used to it. Yeah,
and it's kind of had its day too. It's had its crypto. It hasn't had its day. Sorry, I mean there's going to be digital currencies, but I think that notion of a decentralized power somewhere never going to happen. I mean, there's been if you need any indication of where government wants to take things, just look at how authoritarian. Freedom is you're not allowed to be free anymore. That whole notion of having rights and freedom and whatnot is being pushed back hard. So if you think you're going to have some sort of free debate, decentralized currency, you're literally a pipe dream. Yeah, it's not going to happen. And I'm not trying to predict the future or anything like that. I could just say that from enough history and from just watching today, watching the news, watching politicians, that is not in the future.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting to see because obviously like this story got a lot of coverage from kind of the Bitcoin side of things and people who are always pushing the Bitcoin narrative. But I like to look at it as well in the mining side, because we talk about it a lot, how, Bitcoin and gold should be looked at as complementary assets, not as adversaries to each other. So I think it's a really important story for the mining sector to highlight as well and say, look, we've tried this out. It's not necessarily worked. We've got massive printing. We've got massive inflation.
Yeah.
It's got to come back. It's got to scale back somewhere, and you can take it right back to the core. It can take it right back to mining and that gold standard. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't done a deep analysis on it, but I mean, where this fits really well, like you're saying, is in mining and commodities, where you've got a core asset. And then if you embed like crypto blockchain technology, I mean, it can really make futures markets, especially, really quite efficient.
Yeah.
And also you can create coins then on something that has real assets, has tangible value that's actually used.
Yeah.
And where it does come together and fits quite nicely is because the amount of copper, lithium, vanadium, you name it, rare earth, all of these things are required and desperately needed for this shift in energy. You can see how this can all kind of start morphing and taking place and shifting and helping the world. The problem with trying to analyze anything whenever you come off of any fixed value, like when there was a gold standard, at least you knew how much gold there was. Yeah. Or, I mean, maybe Fort Knox has gold or not. That's always the conspiracy. I don't know.
We'll go check it out one day. We'll live stream the show from Fort Knox, maybe.
But assuming all things were true and you could actually look and see this is how much we've got in the ground, this is how much it's stored, you could at least have a fairly good way to analyze something. Yeah. If it's just simply we're printing money, and it's not even based, and we talked about this before, it shifted from we have this backing and we can analyze things, that then went to we have tax revenue, which we can base that off of. Yeah. And it's moved away from that as well to we have an army. Yeah. We have an army and it backs up our currency. We're going to be the go-to currency of choice. That model we don't want really to continue, because that would be the model China would favor. Yeah. And we can not that we want to get YouTube banning us for saying bad things about China, but
no, but not necessarily the way I'd like to go.
No, I mean, I think a lot of these people that are really pushing for less freedoms and for more authoritarian regime, even them, they're not going to, their far left narrative doesn't run the communist / authoritarian far left narrative the Chinese have. They're not going to be down with a lot of these social programs that the left like over here. So it's kind of that saying is that you might champion these causes, these forcing people to do things until you realize that boot is going to be on your neck sooner or later as well. But anyways, there's enough doom and gloom out there.
No,
we like to focus in on let's try to focus on positive things during the day, because there's too much negative out there.
Totally. Yeah.
And that is having a severe impact on mental health. I mean, especially on young kids. Yeah. You see that the mental health issues in North America are absolutely shocking. There's a great need for people to say, listen, do you need to be focusing on this all day? You don't. So a better kind of step back of looking at statistics and at risk management to realize if something has a 0.5% chance of affecting me, that deserves about 0.5% of my attention.
Exactly. Yeah.
It shouldn't be a part of my day. If it's a big issue for 1% of the population, I don't really care. No. You should be looking at things that affect your community on a large scale. Yeah. And that's the easiest way to look at statistics and statistical probability, is looking to see what are the actual numbers, what's affecting everything, what's really affecting. And most of the time when you see news, whether it's in the markets or politics or whatever, this is a very small, minute sliver of the population, and then the media blows it out of proportion.
Well, exactly. And I think, you made a good point earlier when we started. You said we're going to kind of leave the Afghanistan thing to the side, because that's what really the market's going to do anyways. Yes, there might be some small changes, and I think the Dow and the S&P dropped maybe 0.5% this morning. Yes. But it's not going to, until there's some sort of action being taken, it's not going to really affect anything that we're looking at.
No, I mean, that doesn't affect the markets. It's something to write about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, get clicks. If you're in media, you need to have a story every day. Otherwise, you're not relevant.
Yeah.
So you'll dream up any connection to anything, whether it's the size of hemlines to the stock market to something off in Afghanistan. No. Unless it's got to do with opium and poppy fields, there's not a lot happening there.
Exactly.
So I shouldn't have said that as well.
You did have some exciting news, though, from Gratomic that I know you wanted to highlight.
Yes. So we've been following Gratomic and Arno over there, Arno Brandt, who's the president and CEO. They just announced on Friday a new project in Brazil, and it's the Zumbi project in Brazil. This is going to add a large kind of home base in South America, another graphite project. They've got the details of what they've paid for it and whatnot, but it's got a gross smelter or royalty on it. But it looks like they've got a good cost base for it. Mm-hmm. We're hoping to have Arno on maybe the end of this week.
Yeah.
So we'll go over this in detail. But there's lots of good news coming out from Gratomic. This gives them a strong foothold in another strong property. And they've been looking at properties for a long time. So this wasn't like a willy-nilly decision of, hey, we got an opportunity, let's buy something. It's like, no. They're building up. They're feeling very confident in Namibia with their whole plan is progressing at the pace they want. But this target property in Brazil is going to add another dimension to them. And I love to see it, like strike when the iron's hot. They've been looking and wanting this project for a while. So it's good to see. Great news from Gratomic. We'll get the details from them.
Exactly. And it's important to highlight as well, we've heard a lot about Brazil lately. A lot of companies looking at Brazil, doing things in Brazil. It's a very strong area to be looking at. Like we're at the point with the mining sector. You hear Brazil, it's very encouraging. You hear there are people that are doing projects there, companies that are doing work down there. Really encouraging for them to be in that neck of the woods.
Brazil is certainly gold rich, but I mean, also there's many other metals as well. So people are a bit more hesitant because of South America and with, restrictions and COVID and what's happening in Latin American countries. But to be honest, we talk about gas access in Colombia. Colombia's had some issues. We know that we're very confident there. Brazil has incredible resources there. It's a lot of this just is a matter of people doing it correctly, getting the right regulations. And often when they think that you've gone further away from North America, that people can get away with improperly mining or doing things. That's not the case. No. If you're a Canadian company going into these places, you follow the same rules. I always like to kind of remind people, when you hear about the massive environmental cost of mining, almost all of that comes from that euphemism, artisanal mining. So artisanal mining is illegal mining. That's not an illegal public company mining. That's just poor people going into mines, reactivating them, literally handling cobalt and uranium, like handling terrible things, leaching with their own hand, like they're holding acids and stuff. They're doing terrible things to themselves, their own health, but also then just dumping into the river and dumping into the water. This sounds like just like these small little mom and pop operations couldn't do the damage they do, but it's literally tens of thousands across Africa and South America. And if you're an environmentalist, that's the reality. It isn't the giant corporations that are heavily regulated. These are just people. That's where most of the dumping, most of the harm to the ocean and the water supply is coming from. That's the narrative they don't want to push. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't want to be too hard on people, because if you're desperately poor, I mean desperately poor, and you're willing to risk your own health, even when the UN goes and says, listen, you should use these chemicals, you should use this, we'll even give you this to help with it because we know you're going to do this anyway. They just say, I don't care because I may not live in 2 days.
Yeah, I've got to feed my family. I've got higher priorities than that right now.
Priorities than worrying about what I'm going to be like at 50 or 60. That's not
totally.
And certainly not, I care about the environment. That's a luxury.
No, exactly. I remember listening to, I'm going to blank on her name, but the North Korean lady, Yao-Ning Park, who escaped from North Korea. Yeah. And she made a great point during that conversation. She was on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she said, when you're hungry, all you're thinking about is your next meal. You're not worried about anything else. The priority one is I need to eat. I need to feed my family.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and I think everyone would say that that's reasonable.
Yeah.
So the narrative you hear, like most narratives in the news, and it is, yes, there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of it's purposeful, and it's a lot of even well-intentioned environmental groups, they take advantage of situations. A lot of times people just don't know. They have no idea. The pace at which you have to write articles when you work for a mainstream media, A, you have to make them sensational, and 2, you have to constantly do them.
Yeah.
And most of these people, they have no background in science, in politics, in history, in anything.
Yeah.
They just have gone to journalism school and know how to write at a certain level, and they have to produce an article almost every day.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've touched on that before, and I'm very critical. I try not to read any of this stuff because most of it's silly and it's garbage.
Yeah.
But I also understand the world we live in and the struggles they face, because a lot of them are like, I have to produce something every day.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not going to be held accountable for it. So you write something, you go onto a big database, you look up, just requote someone from the New York Times. They've written an article. You don't care what their bias is. You just put it out there, spit it out, and you think, hey, I've quoted someone from the New York Times. It's probably legit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's laziness. It's not a lot of work. And that's unfortunately the way the world is right now. And I like to point that out because mining hasn't done itself any favors. But there's so much good work that goes on. So many great CEOs. You've seen them on here that we've had these conversations with them. They love the environment. They care about it. They are fine with regulations as long as they're fair and make sense.
Yeah.
Because they are mostly in Vancouver, love being out, love hiking, They don't want to ruin the environment. It's the biggest misunderstood or kind of propaganda thing that you see.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, though, there are giant, massive companies like Vale where you saw that they endangered lives. And the good thing about that in South America when they did that and that dam broke is I don't know where the cases are, but they were criminally holding them responsible for that, which once again, I'm 100% all for, because unfortunately, especially giant corporations, global corporations are not held responsible. And people have this imaginary belief that I could be a tough president CEO, but also, and I can do this, and this, and I can act in a certain way and do something efficient for the company by cutting corners, but also then pretend like I'm a great guy. Like, no. Just because the corporation does something, if you're running that corporation, that's you. Yeah. It isn't a separate identity. It is legally, but if you think that you are two different people, that's a mental disorder. Yeah. So that's a very opinionated, but I mean, I think it fits right in line. If you think that you're two different people at one time, that's not a good sign.
The math's not checking out.
Anyways, I'm being a little bit critical today, and today was supposed to be a bit more positive. But it just highlights, because it's all a part of mindset as well, is that, listen, we could give all of our attention to negative all day long. Yeah. And I don't mean that someone shouldn't have a good risk profile and risk analysis to see where are risks. You should, but most people know what the problems are today. Yeah. So if you're still walking around, running around, marching around, talking about problems, you're wasting your time. Yeah.
Start looking at solutions.
What's the solution? And the best way you could solve something is actually put some action towards it. Once again isn't walking around. That's not doing anything. No. Drawing attention. That doesn't do anything. No. Is putting your money towards it or literally working on the solution. And there's lots of great companies. Gratomic is feeding a graphite line towards battery energy metals. You've got GMG creating these incredible, fantastic small batteries at a rate that's just incredible. And you see, they've attracted Cantor Fitzgerald, which we talked about on Friday. Yeah. So there's so much good work going on out there. And that's our job, is to just get people excited about companies that are really doing strong work at a right level with regulations in mind. And just trying to get people, excited about the world and to focus on positives, like Desert Mountain Energy with helium, unique stories with great companies that you can see this CEO and this president on and realize this is a genuine, authentic human being. Yeah. And they're not just mouthing PR things that you see. No, exactly. So much from some of these giant FANG type stocks that are just delusional people.
Well, you've got a guy who cares about what he's doing and really believes in the process and really believes in the solution that they're going to achieve as well. Yes. And that's what makes it so exciting, is that you see it, like, we like to get excited about those kind of things, but you see it in these guys as well. They're excited. Like, hey, do you know how many problems we can solve if we got all this helium out of the ground in Arizona?
Yes.
Like, oh, okay.
Yes. So, there's lots of good going on, and we want to kind of remind people that if you start your day off with the intention of looking at positive things, you're going to find more positive things. If you're depressed, you're feeling down and you're worried, you're stressed, you're living in fear, your brain's going to naturally find that.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work, but listen, it's your day is going to be better off if you focus on those things. And if it's something small, like you can get out for an hour-long walk, clear your head, get some exercise, that's great. If it means drinking a bit more water, getting a nap, whatever it is to make you feel healthy, to clear up your brain, and to focus on what do I need to do today for myself, for my family, for my friends, in order to make today a better day. That's the most important thing one can do. If you get caught up on wondering what's happening in Afghanistan and how you're going to affect it, you're not. You're going to have no effect on that.
Exactly.
So let's be realistic. What you can affect is those around you, your community, your environment. So go out, focus your attention on that, and let's get at it. Let's have a good day.
Dedicate the 95% of your time to the 95% of positive things that are in the world. And sure, dedicate that 5% of your time to the 5% of negative stuff.
Give yourself half an hour to worry a day.
Exactly. That's the best. Usually before bed.
Good stuff. Well, anyways, that was a bit lectury and a bit preachy, but we hope
be positive.
Yeah, be positive. Yeah, good stuff. All right, good to see you here, Austin. We're gonna have a great week. And thanks for everyone for joining. We're back in the swing of things. September is just around the corner, so let's think what we're gonna do for the fall and push on ahead.
Awesome. Thanks for checking in, guys.